So hi everyone, I am going to talk today about secure DevOps. Why is it still important in 2021? My name is Stefania Chaplin. I'm a solutions architect covering Europe for a company called Secure Code Warrior. You can find me on Twitter, Devsecops. That's probably the best place to find me, and likewise if you have any questions, etc. So the problem, I'm not going to read off a slide, but the summary is security hacks are happening all the time. I don't think you need to wander around too much on LinkedIn or on the news to hear about all of the ransomware, hear about, different companies being exploited, vulnerabilities, etc. Part of the issue is it's quite expensive for companies. So one of my stats, it's about $4 million for a data breach. But unfortunately, just above that, you can see 1/4 of all data breaches last year were caused by human error. Oh no, because a lot of the time, the people that introduce these vulnerabilities might not necessarily know what they're doing. They think they're doing the right thing, but is everyone security empowered, etc. So we end up with these silos. You've got your developer tribe and you've got your security tribe, and they hang out in different offices. They speak different languages. One talks about constructors, one talks about CSRF. And then we had DevOps. And if you haven't read the Phoenix Project, I would recommend it. I didn't read it for a while, but then when I did read it, I literally finished it in like 3 days because I found it. It's not a textbook. It's like, wandering around the life of day of this guy who works in ops, and, how he deals with different persona stakeholder management. So yeah, would recommend. And Gene Kim, so he wrote this in 2013. So we talk about DevOps all the time, and some people think it's everywhere, but fundamentally we are, everyone's on their own journey of combining the development and the operation process to be streamlined. You have some companies that are what's the word, deploying 10 times an hour or a minute or a second. I can't remember what the stat is, but a lot. And then other companies, agile, maybe every 2 weeks. And when I speak to my non-technical friends, I talk about, do you remember like Microsoft, Office? It used to be 95, 98, 2000, and now it's 365. So you used to have years between, different stages, and now, it's very, very quick. The problem with DevOps, in terms of you're releasing the entire time, what about security? Because you've got this magical unicorn that is literally releasing features, all the time, and, beautiful rainbow features. But what happens when there's a vulnerability? What about poor security that has to go around literally mopping up, all of these problems that may be within the application? Enter DevSecops. So what's worth noting with DevSecops, I'm not saying let's put it in the middle. As we transition from test phase to releasing, let's just put some security, there. We need to have it at all stages. And what I mean by that is start from the beginning, before even any, before fingers to keyboards, like, pen to paper kind of open. Why don't we do some threat modeling? Let's talk about the application, different data flows, what could happen, how we prevent it. Once you're writing the code, scan it, whether that's static, dynamic, just having pen testers on it. And there's multiple, security checks you can have within the development stage. And then, of course, you have ops as well. And I think with ops, one of the key things, at least for me, is threat response team, because you're going to get hacked no matter what, whether on a personal or a company level. And it's an unfortunate fact that I see it as kind of inevitable. I say this because my ex-partner, who was very, very, very technical, we were just on the roof, last year, and then he looked at his phone. He's like, I think I might have just been hacked. I'll just be right back. And a hacker had sent one of his, passwords to him in an email. And like, anyway, since that experience, I'm like, we're all going to get hacked. If he can get hacked, oh my God, so can we all. Anyway, but when you're in ops, having the incident response team, stuff like logging and monitoring. Like for me, I'm an ex-developer, and it's kind of like, logging, that's boring. But actually, it's so valuable because the ops team needs to be able to operate, within production. So that's the thing about DevSecops. It is, you need to have it at every stage. And this is the cycle of recurring vulnerabilities that I like to talk about. And I'm going to go through it a bit quicker than normal because I'm trying to be lightning speed. But starting here, let's just say a bug appears. Then we've got security, find it. Boom, security, we found the problem. We're putting it in the Jira board. Awesome. So then, into the bug tracking system. Developers, and this is my favorite bit of the slide, find a way to fix the problem. Is it the best way? Is it a way? Is it we're solving it? Unfortunately, the knowledge disappears into the black hole. People move teams, people move organizations, and then the bug reappears. So you end up with this unfortunate cycle. So, what can you do? Have security, at every stages. And also, I talk about this a lot. We talk about shifting left. Why not start left? We want to empower development, empower, operations, and empower security so that we can all work for this common goal, because no one wants to be the front page of the newspaper, of the news websites. And it's very much about working, together to kind of get to these goals. And especially when you start to, achieve this, it's also important to take into account culture. It's not a case of just buying loads of tools. You need to think about, values and attitudes, our thoughts, I think it's our beliefs lead to our thoughts, lead to our actions. So whether it's a top down or a bottom up, it's not just about buying all of the security tools. It's really, breaking down the silos and getting everyone to resolve the security issues together. So this is kind of the happy, world we're aiming for, because DevOps is awesome, but it's also, very, it can, as I had my image with the unicorn, it can produce problems. So it's about empowering, inspiring the kind of entire team. And one of the ways you can do this, I'm not sure if anyone has heard, I can send this link kind of in the chat as well. But what we're trying to do is inspire intrinsic security. So maybe I should have a slide on this next time I do the talk. There's a lot of research about how it's cheaper to fix a problem. Well, I'm sure most people on the call. Would you rather fix a problem in production? Would you rather fix it in CI? Would you rather fix it in the IDE? Or probably you'd rather not introduce it at all. We're getting there. But anyway, it's a lot cheaper to start left. And what you can do with Sensei is, this is actually an IntelliJ plugin that you can check out. I'm probably going to do everyone a really bad disservice, but I'm just going to paraphrase just for simplicity. Remember Clippy? Wasn't he great in Microsoft Word? So with Sensei, what you have is the ability, say if you have an issue, if you were, I don't know, doing something like system out print line, might not want to do that on the console, but maybe you have that there. You get your little red squiggle, you right click, and it's like, would you prefer to use a logging framework instead? You right click, okay, let's do the logger, and then it will import the line of code, and then it will, maybe change like 2 or 3 lines. It's fixed. And similarly, if you're accidentally introducing an SQL injection because you're, concatenating strings, hey, we'll parameterize that for you. So it's really about, being there at the right time to help you. I can drop this link in the chat. But yeah, hopefully this has given you a little bit of an understanding about, DevOps, why security is important, different stages of the security, and also how you can start left with development, and, have that kind of security help at the right stage within Sensei. So as I mentioned, you can find me on Twitter. I'm Devsecops. I've also just started an Instagram. I mainly post memes, but I'm just experimenting with it. So hey, if you want, you can find me there as well. Or also email, LinkedIn, whatever works for you. I'm happy to take any questions. Normally I do this talk in about 20 minutes. So I was like checking my time the whole time, and I'm like, phew, I think that's a lightning talk. So yeah, hopefully it's gone okay.
Thank you so much. That was definitely a lightning talk. So thank you very much. I loved your slides. I love the rainbows and the unicorns. If anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute and just interrupt, or if you're not happy to come up on camera, you can pop any questions you have in the chat. Miles, I know you said you were interested. I don't know if you had any questions, or if you're preparing.
I did. Just the one. The Sensei plugin. What languages does it work with?
At the moment, it's very new. It's new and shiny. Okay. So at the moment, Java, I think maybe Android, but I have to check that. I think maybe Kotlin, but cool. It's IntelliJ focused. So I need to confirm the second two.
Super. Thank you. Really love the presentation, by the way. Really informative. Very good.
Awesome. So I can see a question, which I can hopefully answer. How is it different from Sneak? So I actually used to work for Sonotype, which is Sneak competitor, and they specialize in a lot of fun things. But for example, Sneak focuses on software composition analysis, which is open source management. So say, for example, anything you're getting from Maven Central, hey, I want to use a certain version of Struts or of Spring or of Bouncy Castle, whatever you're choosing to use. That's where Sneak can really help you step in and tell you about these components. Like Bouncy Castle, hey, it's got a CVSS 10, not so good. And also they expanded to container space and other bits, but I'm trying to break it down. What we're really about, whether it's Sensei and Secure Code Warrior, is about the code that you write. So yes, maybe you're going to start using Spring, but what else, what functionality are you adding on top of that? So if you are going to, when you're writing your own code, are you writing it securely? Are you accidentally introducing vulnerabilities? So there's like a common example I talk about a lot in talks called, when I say username enumeration, it means different things. I met with one of my developer friends, we were walking in the park, and I was like, if I say username enumeration, what does that mean to you? And then he started talking about, type enum and all this. And I understood that because I used to be a developer. And I'm like, actually, it's a type of authentication vulnerability, which is number 2 on the OWASP top 10. And it basically means if you are logging in and you get your password wrong, if it says your password's wrong, print password is wrong, that is a security vulnerability, because then the hacker knows, aha, so the username is right. Let me just brute force. I can try some passwords now. Whilst the correct user journey would be like, if you get your password wrong, it's like, oh, username or password is incorrect. And it's those kind of little differences that developers don't necessarily know or think about, etc. And I know because I was one. It's those kind of changes. So while Sneak addresses the open source, so stuff that you're using from Maven Central, NPM, PyPy, Sensei and Secure Code Warrior focus on the code that you write. So hopefully that was a long-winded, knowledgeable answer.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions at all? As I said, feel free to unmute and jump in if you have any more.
Only a comment. So we were asked to do Secure Code Warrior mini site at my workplace, where we had to kind of do like there's different like katas, like your white belt. So to get even the white belt with the Code Warrior thing, it was quite hard actually, because it's the series of questions you have to do. So I think it's an awesome tool. I wish it was available on a personal people as well, but I think it's only available for the enterprise at the moment.
So you can go on the website and get a website trial. It's just, you can try individual challenges. That bit's free. So if anyone want to call, maybe I'll drop that link as well. I'll just put it in the chat. Because yes, we do obviously do enterprise, and then you've got courses and tournaments and all this. But if people on the call just want to try a Java challenge, I'll find one. I'll put it in the link, and then you can just have a go, and they just take a few minutes. But thank you for the feedback. That's lovely to hear, and I'm glad that you're enjoying it.
Great, thank you. So we'll move on now to Miles. Miles, if you're ready to share your screen, and you can get started.
Okay. Okay, can you guys all hear me and see my not very elegant slides?
Yes.
Yep.
Sounds good. Great. Okay. My name is Miles Davenport. I've been a developer for far too many years, and I work for a small secure messaging company called Armour Communications. Today's lightning talk, which will hopefully not overrun too much, is all about managing yourself. I'm not a manager. I'm a hands-on developer. This is not about managing a team. It's about managing yourself personally. Okay, the first slide is deliberately slightly ambiguous. I think tech is getting more complex. 20 years ago, tech was simpler. We've got Devsecops, we've got release. It's not just a case of getting code out there anymore and throwing it over the fence. There's more complexity, full stack, whatever. I just wanted to, the second slide is really about how your workplace, your personal life, you've got other people, you've got yourself, you've got your environment, you've got actions, you've got perceptions, and you've got again, complexity. I'm going to present something called Stoicism to you, or being Stoic. It's something that I came across about 5 years ago, and I use it on a regular basis, personally, at work, and I find it's really beneficial. It's not new, in fact, it's very old. It comes from Greek philosophy, so it's a couple of thousand years old. It's been practiced throughout history. It's not something that I was taught at university or on a training course. You know, you hear about things like mindfulness and stuff like this. It's a big subject, and I'm not going to go over all the sort of 9 bits. I'm going to cover 2 or 3 bits. And I'm certainly not going to use terms like dichotomy of control, because that to me sounds a little bit wordy. What it means is what's under your own personal control. For example, the weather. It's a really bad example. I have no control over the weather. I have no control over, you know, the news. I have no control over some other developer's security bug or whatever. But I can control how I respond to situations, how I respond to events. That's one thing that I have absolute control over. And I find that really, I find it really empowering, but not just for that sake. I've learned a lot that I can sometimes be a bit of a chatterbox. I'm a creative dev. I really enjoy what I do, and I sometimes could be maybe slightly over exuberant. But I find that being Stoic, it allows me to respond to certain situations. It could be an awareness. So I remind myself to listen, to pause, to give other people a chance. It also gives me an opportunity to respond in a potentially stressful situation. When the sun's shining and the world's a happy place, that's not really a challenge. But if something is going wrong, let's go back to DevOps. Say a release is going wrong and you can see your production infrastructure or pipeline, it's not happy. That's a stressful situation. So I believe that how I respond in a situation like that gives me additional control. It's not about bottling up my emotions, but it's about listening to people, pausing, and a self-awareness. If I'm feeling really stressed, if something really awful is happening, I can keep a check on that. And I can ask for assistance if needed. But again, it comes under the kind of the heading of, I can control how I respond in any given situation. The weather, I can't do anything about. Something else in the sort of, let's call it the Stoic manifesto, is journaling, also known as write it down. Now, I was doing this slide, and apologies for the stick man getting a little bit covered up, but I was thinking about all the things that I do that help me to write things down. I'm in a creative job, I'm a creative individual, and I have, I've got my pad here. I like to jot things down. I like to journal. I've got a blog. I've got a personal brand. But even things like my code, GitHub gist, pictures, stories, it's all about writing things down. And I think this can be applied throughout history. People often retell stories, but in the most basic sort of way. I think journaling can actually help you certainly decompress after a really tough day at work, or it can help you think through an idea. And I think the previous presentation, if you're looking at designing a system, you can do things like threat analysis, vulnerability analysis, write some stuff down. I think it's a great way of just summarizing stuff. And I think it goes hand in hand with the previous slide. The last thing I'm going to really present in the sort of Stoic toolbox is training your perceptions and taking the view from above. It's, again, they're a little bit grandiose. Really, for me, it's something that I knew that I do occasionally. I get too close to a problem, and it helps if I take a break. If I'm coding when I'm tired, I'll probably look at the code next morning and go, that code probably could be better, and I'll usually refactor it, you know, whatever. But it's a sign of feedback cycle. So whether you're designing stuff, bug fixing stuff, problem solving, being creative, designing the extension for your house, cooking, if you're tired or you're too close to something, suffering from fatigue, it helps to step back, zoom out, and look at things with a fresh pair of eyes after a break or next day. And it's kind of common sense, really. But I'm surprised how often I still fall into the trap. I will be working on some code, and I'm suddenly thinking, I'm shattered. So for me, it's about taking a break. The URL at the bottom is dailystoic.com. It's not my website, but it's the information that I used to prepare this presentation. I think Stoicism is, Stoicism to me is all about continuous improvement. It's about improving me. If I can be the best version of me, I can be professional, reliable, and hopefully improve myself professionally and personally. I think it helps to be professional. If you have your stuff together, I think it helps your perception or what people think of you. I think if you're reliable and you're a developer or you're in Devsecops, I think it's a definite good thing. Awareness, how are you feeling? What's your environment like? If you're under stress, try and slow things down a bit. Be aware of how you're feeling. Related, Pomodoro Technique, it allows you to focus on a single task for 25 minutes and then a 5-minute break. It's not part of the Stoic sort of way. I think it takes a bit of courage, because I think you have to take a healthy look at yourself and go, how can I improve the next time I find myself in a not stealthy, in a stressful situation? Being Stoic is definitely not bottling things up. It's not the stiff British upper lip where everything is internalized, absolutely not. But if things get stressful and emotional, there's often a better time to talk about it after the event, when things are a bit more chilled. Almost a bit like, say, a sprint or a scrum retrospective. But again, you can use this, if you're cooking something and your kitchen catches fire, you can tell your mates after you've put the fire out. Very bad example, sorry. That is about it. You can download the slides from milesdavenport.com/managingyourself.pdf. That's it from me. If there's any questions, fire away.
Thank you so much, Miles. I can't believe that's your first lightning talk and you're referring to a previous talk that you just listened to and managing to slot that in to your talk. That's incredible. I can't manage to do that.
I've done a bit of, when I was 19, I spent a year as an IT trainer in Budapest in Hungary, and that was like a baptism of fire. So that's a conversation for another day. But, I've been under the spotlight a wee bit before, but this is the first time I've ever done anything for the LJC.
Yeah, really good. I feel like that was the talk I needed to hear at this time. I had a conversation yesterday where it was suggested that maybe I was too close to a problem. So yeah, that was definitely the talk I needed to hear.
You've just raised a really interesting point, because if somebody says, you're too close to a problem, or Miles, you're too stressed, or whatever. I often don't want to be told that at the time. I think it's human nature to go, no, I'm fine. But, you know, I think half an hour later, I will probably think, yeah, I could have probably done with a break or whatever.
Yeah.
That's certainly my personal experience, yeah.
No, that was great. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to jump in. Oh, Alex, yeah, go for it.
Miles, so I think you mentioned mindfulness in passing.
Yes.
And I definitely get the impression that a lot of mindfulness involves the not worrying about things so much. What other differences or similarities you've seen in that?
Well, one part of Stoicism, and I can't remember what the heading is it is about your perception, and that things that you often worry about, it uses the term are ephemeral, or they're in an instant. So I think that's one way of allaying people's problems. There's been times when I've had sleepless nights worrying about releases and training or whatever, but I don't think it's something that you can just switch off, because your mind doesn't work like that. But I think mindfulness, you can clear your mind, you can think about certain positive things. You know, I often think of when I did Land's End to John O'Groats cycling for a couple of weeks on a push bike, and you know, it allows me to focus on something else. It doesn't take me away from pressure and stress, but it does allow me to it's a really interesting question.
But I like something you said. It's very much a practice.
It is a practice.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I was considering a talk on mindfulness because it's very much about practicing not thinking about the things that upset you. And if those thoughts come to mind, just not engaging with them, just accepting that those thoughts happened.
Agreed. I read a book on mindfulness about 3 years ago, and it mentions somebody sitting by the side of a motorway, just watching the traffic going backwards and forwards. And I think the fact that you can acknowledge the thoughts that you have, it doesn't mean you need to engage with them. So I think that was probably one of the most valuable analogies that I ever heard about being mindful. But I still get stressed out. I still talk at the wrong time occasionally. I'm human, and as are we all. I think there's a lot of crossover though between being stoic and being mindful.
One other thing I just wanted to say, which
sure.
wasn't a question, was that I'm a big fan of the Pomodoro Technique.
Oh yeah.
I'm just not very good at it.
No, I'm not either.
This is where it came from. One of these timers.
I did a part-time master's and then became a full-time student about 14 years ago, and I used the Pomodoro Technique to literally keep myself focused on the many moving parts of my dissertation, and I still use it a fair bit. But if there's going to be a lot of context switching, I don't. But again, it helps you manage your time.
Have I hogged all your question time?
Not at all. Thank you for the feedback and the input. It's really cool.
Jump in. I'll talk forever if people don't stop me.
I'm the same.
Well, I think I personally would love to hear a longer talk on that, Miles. And Alex, in your LinkedIn poll, I voted for mindfulness. But I was beaten, so never mind. Next time I'll get some more people to vote with me, and so I get to win. But yeah, I think both topics are really interesting, so I'd definitely be up for hearing talk.
Thank you. Thanks for your questions, Alex. It gave me some creative sort of crossover, so it's good. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Great. Alex, did you want to share and get started? Great.
Right. Do you have my screen full of stuff? Or...
Yes.
That's a pain. Let's have one more go at that. Sorry, folks, I'm just trying to get... Right. Okay, hello. I'm Alex McLintock. As you may know from previous talks, I'm an architect. I do a lot of big data, and every so often I come across terms that people don't really know very well, data lakes being one of them. So what I'm hoping to do is just give you a 5-minute overview of what it is what to be a data lake, but also compare it against data warehouses. So data warehouses were about 30 years old, maybe longer than that, whereas data lakes are about 10 years old. And the other thing to be aware of is that this is the middle of 3 talks. So it's like you're jumping into book 2 of a trilogy. There is another talk about data warehouses on my YouTube channel. I'll try and go through this without worrying too much about whether you actually need anything from that earlier talk. Let's have a go. So what's the differences between data lakes and data warehouses? Well, fundamentally, they're both good for reporting. That's pretty much what they're there for. Analytics is another part of that reporting. You're looking at lots of data and trying to learn about it. They're both good for business intelligence. So typically, business people will connect up to these systems and do their own charts and their own diagrams and learn from those. And so they're both good for that. And the other important thing here is that they both sit behind the operational databases. So they collate the data from lots of different sources, or I say lots, that's one of the differences, but they collate the data from different sources so that they can be aggregated for those reports. So but what are the differences between the data lakes and data warehouses? Well, the main criteria that I know of are these 3 things. So scalability, flexibility, and effort. And the effort is largely how much time do you put in to get it working in the first place, as well as considering how much effort does it take across the whole life of your system. So let's start off with 1, scalability. Well, to be honest, the first thing to realize is, of course, is that data lakes are fundamentally created for big data. They were the first publicly available one, I think, was basically Hadoop, created about 12-15 years ago. And it provided 2 main things. It provided a distributed file system in HDFS, and this was something that meant that you could store many terabytes of data relatively easily. And it also provided a distributed compute. So if I just stick with the file system for a minute, Hadoop is not the only way of doing this nowadays. So in the cloud we have Amazon's S3, Azure, and Google have their own similar sorts of things. So it's quite easy nowadays to get a distributed file system. But now, distributed compute, some people don't actually class it as part of the data lake. I think it's vital. Originally, Hadoop created this thing called MapReduce. Relatively few people use it nowadays. Hadoop moved on to a Java-based container system called Yarn. But nowadays, things like Spark can use Yarn or their own clustering technology, or quite recently Spark has been set up to run on Kubernetes as well. What's next? Flexibility. So here I'm trying to point out that data lakes are far more flexible than data warehouses. With a data warehouse, you typically only have SQL as the way of accessing that data. Whereas with a data lake, because it's not really trying to do everything all at once, it lets you provide whatever kind of data science programming that you want to manipulate that data. So it may be a tiny bit more work preparing your data science, but at least it's more flexible. One of the things that you quite often do with a data lake is to create your own data warehouse. So some of the data in your data lake you define and you say, this is important to me, I have it in a particular format, and I'm going to put an SQL interface on so that I can read this particular sets of data. And in the long term, I think that data lakes are also more flexible, because you can use them with a whole bunch of other bits of software that just maybe haven't even been invented yet. I think that will probably have to wait for another talk, though. So what's the final one in the 3 criteria? It's effort. How much effort is there to implement? And I think for this, I need to try and describe the timeline. So here I'm trying to describe the processes for ingesting data into a data lake. Now, to start with, you typically just load it in. It's like a file system. It's usually an object store, but it can be as simple as just copying a file into your system. And in theory, that means your data is on your data lake. So it's very little work to set up in the first place. Of course, if you're a data scientist or a data analyst, you know that you're going to have to clean the data. You have to validate the data. There's almost no way around that. I'm sure that there are ways of automating some of this, but it's still work. And to be honest, you do a similar amount of work, I think, in a data lake or a data warehouse. But the difference is, with the data warehouse, everything has to be up front. You have to do that before you load that data into your data warehouse. Whereas with a data lake, it's a subsequent step. You can do it later on. 6 minutes. Let's see if I can finish this off. Likewise, you may wish to transform your data into different data models for different purposes. With a data warehouse, you have to do that up front before you really design your data warehouse. And with a data lake, you can do it after you've loaded the data, and you can do it several times. You can think, oh, well, actually, now I need to do something else. Finally, here you typically want to apply your SQL interface through your data lake, and so you may wish to prepare some of the data for that. And so I think what I've tried to describe here is that you typically do a similar amount of work for a data lake and a data warehouse, but with a data warehouse, it's almost all upfront work. It has to be designed well in the first place, whereas with a data lake, it's more spread over time, and so you can correct things and learn about things, and generally it's a lot less risk. So in summary, what have I been trying to tell you? So if you've got a very small problem and you can define it in a simple schema that you can do on a few servers, then a data warehouse is probably fine for you. You do have to do a lot of upfront work. Data warehouses can be very fast, and the important thing is that you have to kind of know the approximate reports that you want to build before you design your data warehouse. With a data lake, you perhaps don't get a good response from there. The latency is worse. It's best for huge reports, so if you've got really large amounts of data, then the data lake is the way to go, and I think it's more flexible in the long term. So coming up to 8 minutes, thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Alex. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to unmute or pop them in the chat. I just want to say I loved your slides. Thought they were really nice.
Yeah, I'm supposed to.
Where did you get the background from?
Sorry?
Where did you get the background for the slides from? Where did you design them?
Bottom right hand corner. Bottom right hand corner. I have to credit Slides Go,
yes.
Flat Icon, Free Pick, and Story Sets.
Yeah, they're lovely. And I like that your Zoom background kind of matches a bit as well. Very coordinated.
Thank you. The slides I used are all free, but you have to credit them.
Yeah, no, they're really nice. They look, yeah, snazzy. I like them.
Thank you. I can't see everybody, so if you want to ask a question, just...
Oh, yeah. Do I need to unshare you?
If anybody wants to ask a question.
Hi, Alex. I think this is a really good presentation. I've always had the same question about like data lake versus data warehouse. One thing I just want to kind of understand is, even though you've got to do upfront work in data warehouse, that work is delayed but still required. So where's the benefit in that model for the lake
I
house?
think a lot of the benefit comes from not getting it wrong in the first place. By delaying the work until you need it, you have a better idea of what actually is needed, and also it means that you can do more later on. So, for example, with a data warehouse, you kind of have to know your reports in the first place, and you design your database schema to efficiently do those reports. Now, in reality, somebody might come up with another report in 6 months' time, and another report, and another report, or some other question. And particularly with data science, people might say, well, oh, I want to learn this thing, or I want to calculate these facts. And with a data warehouse, it might already be too late. You might have had to build in your efficiencies, your optimizations, and not able to do those sorts of reports. With the data lake, is a lot more flexible.
Okay. And in terms of technology stacks, what are sort of things? Because a data warehouse usually is relational databases, but do data lakes have relational databases in the equation, or is it something more broader like Hadoop and?
Unfortunately, that's probably the subject of my next talk.
Okay.
So with a data warehouse, they start off as relational databases, and sometimes people will combine a columnar database into the data warehouse, and that's quite generally a good thing. And sometimes people will incorporate a data lake in their data warehouse, and likewise, people with data lakes might actually have an extra type of database of some kind. The sort of technology I'm typically thinking of is taking your data, turning it into a file format like Parquet or ORC, and then applying some sort of SQL engine to read data from those files. And the Hadoop ones were Hive and Impala, and there's something called Trino, which used to be Presto. That's an open source one from Apache, and that became so. On top of that, Amazon's AWS will sell you or rent you services very much like that, such as Athena. So there's a bunch of ways of doing it, really.
Cool, thank you.
Okay.
If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to unmute. Just check if I've missed anybody. I think that's it. And I know I said we only had 3 talks, but I'm very excited because we actually have 4 talks. Farhad has offered to give his first ever lightning talk to the LJC, and he was inspired by Miles, which is like double excitement. So I'm really excited. I don't know if you've got slides, but I've made you co-host so you can share your screen.
All right, perfect.
And your talk is why Spring Reactive didn't work for my team. So best of luck. Thank you so much for stepping in at the last minute. And yeah, really looking forward to hearing this.
Okay, I look forward to the feedback. Please do provide me feedback.
Yeah, I'll add your name to the form now. So yeah, please add feedback.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna try and see if I get my PowerPoint deck, which I actually literally did after in a few minutes. So please be kind. Right. Okay. Are you able to see my screen yet?
Yeah, we
cool.
can see it.
Okay. Cool. Excellent. Let me just. How do you move this into presentation mode? Slideshow.
Clicking on the play.
Okay. Can you see the slides? Yes. Cool. Yeah, perfect. Absolutely. Right. So this is just a brief kind of knowledge sharing thing. So we went. We were very excited to use Spring Reactive for our project, and that excitement kind of turned a bit of a nightmare 6 months down the line. So this slide attempts to explain what happened and what I learned from it, and hopefully maybe other people can share or contribute. Okay, so just to set the context, so what we have is a Spring Batch job So Spring Batch is a framework that actually allows you to run batch jobs. And what we created, basically, we went with something known as remote partitioning, where basically you can have jobs defined, and you can have this batch manager, which will allow you to distribute your jobs to different batch workers, and the workers can do individual things. So really simply, we had some work to be done. We distribute them across via queue, which is implemented using RabbitMQ, and the workers were basically calling out to these services. I've called them generically service 1, 2, and 3, and these are all kind of Spring web services, and they're running Spring Boot reactive container using Netty. So that was basically the context of the jobs, and we kick it off, and basically the service actually call them out. We get the data, we process it on, and then basically eventually they were called query service 1, service 2, and finally once the inputs will be combined and the output will be saved into service 3. So that's basically was the context, and we thought, okay, fine, let's try and actually make these services very resilient, and so that they can actually process lots of these things, so we can have lots of these running. And so we thought, okay, fine, we'll actually add we'll Dockerize them, and then we can happily put them onto Kubernetes environment. And so basically we put them into Kubernetes environment, everything looked good, and all of our small limited sets of tests that we're running worked perfectly fine. We were very happy until when we ran a full batch, like with a real payloads, and then suddenly things stopped working. We actually ran into lots of problems there, and the main problems we came across was network timeouts. Now that's interesting because I will go back and forth between the slides to explain the issues on here, but generally the issues were we've got multiple layers here. So this thing was these services were initially being run outside this Kubernetes server, and basically there are lots of hidden paths. Things that I've not described in this diagram is like the IT level infrastructure timeouts that were present, but those cause lots of issues with reactive streams, because when you're working with reactive streams, you have to actually try and actually make sure that there's these things as we found out that you have to make sure that the reactive stream was it tries to process small amount of data every single time, and you're trying to persist and work with it, and if they're quite latency sensitive. But if it takes longer, for example, for something to come through, you can have issues where connections start closing down. So we have, for example, a flux of object. Sorry, before I even started over there, I assumed people knew what flux and monos were. If not, I can explain that, what that actually means as well. Is there a chance that people know what I'm talking about in terms when I say flux and monos in Spring Reactive?
Can you just run it past me, please?
Of course, cool. I will then. Sorry about missing the context. Okay, so effectively, reactive programming. What we actually have is, instead of actually making a single call, so imagine if you have to say request a list of objects that could be coming back from service 1. Instead of actually describing this as a list, which that can serialize into JSON list, you can describe them as flux. And flux is a representation of a stream of objects. So you actually, instead of actually having that one big payload of all the objects in actually a single JSON, you actually have individual objects coming streamed over the pipeline. So this allows you to kind of do streaming pipelines and effectively change things from having this large bursty big collection objects into streaming smaller manageable chunks. And the idea is that you can then potentially deal with lots and lots of large payloads, because you never have to deal with everything in one go. So, if you have a list of, say, 1,000 objects, 1,000 records that you're trying to fetch, you don't have to fetch them all 1,000 in one go, because you can actually blow up the heap on each of these services if you're trying to do that. So Fluxes provide that wrapper, and closely related to Flux is a mono, and a mono is a specialized Flux where it's actually only a single object or is empty. So, so if you try and deal with that, to actually have that. So this is the reason why we decided to actually go with this Spring Reactive in the first place, because we wanted to be able to scale our batches, because we knew that we could actually have lots of large running payloads, and this seemed to be like a popular way of dealing with this sort of situation without having to blow out the heap on this each of the services. So that was the rationale for why we went there. Does that make sense? Anybody has any questions I can clarify?
No, that's really good. Thank you for explaining about Flux and Mono.
Okay,
Really
apologies. I should have first started with that, but okay.
No worries,
I'll
it's all good.
I'll keep that in mind for my next talks. Right. So yeah. So with Flux, this was a bit of a gotcha that we didn't actually realize that of course there are always these things, but with a normal web call, these timeouts are generally more favored. They're larger because they're not as sensitive, because I guess the expectation is that the payloads will be big enough. So we ran into lots of again, Netty. So Netty is an implementation of the service. So each of these services, which are Spring service, actually have different different types of servers that you can run. You could use Tomcat, you could have used Netty. So we were using Netty because that's the most famous reactive container that's actually out there at the moment, and the open source community within Spring. So and we kept running into these connection closed prematurely issues, and if you do search around for Stack Overflow for this, there are lots of people complaining about that, and they're very subtle issues that it could be it could complain. So there are lots of different variants, and we found that Netty wasn't very well documented in terms of these issues. So we actually tried to we did try to kind of solve most of the issue by increasing the timeouts and things, but we were never comfortable because we never understood the actual problem, what was actually going on. So those kind of things are interrelated, but that gave us lots of issues in trying to kind of scale up these jobs to run onto multiple services. The other thing was in terms of Flux versus Mono. So some of these endpoints would return monos, some of these would return Fluxes, but one thing we didn't really we kind of understood later on was the size of the payload mattered quite a lot. So in terms of each individual object, so if you actually have a pretty heavy object, we've got lots of fields in them. So even though you're splitting the stream into individual objects, those individual objects themselves might be too big. And you can tweak the payload size, but then I think we're kind of juggling with, whether you want to actually, are we really kind of streaming? Because, is the streaming make sense with large objects, or can we work with small objects over them? So we tried experimenting with that, different payload sizes, dividing up the work. But then when we started doing that, it started to make our domain model a lot more complex, because now we're not only having to deal with, okay, this is the domain model and this is the DTO, but the DTO is a lot more complex now because it's a collection of smaller things. So in the end, we just ask ourselves, do we actually need streams processing at this point in our project? And yeah, and then we said, okay, what would be the alternative? The alternative was we actually get away from reactive. We use normal traditional containers, and that way at least it's quite predictable. And in order to cap the amount of data that could be sent over the container, we can use pagination, so we don't really get lots of big objects coming through. One thing I forgot to mention about reactives, one of the benefits of reactive, which is one of the reasons why we actually wanted to go over there, was that the reactive containers you have a very low thread footprint, because they try to reuse the same threads for serving multiple requests, whereas a normal non-reactive server would actually be using a thread pool, so you can exhaust the thread pool supply if lots of connections actually come through. So we really liked reactive, but in the end, I think the complexity, or maybe I think maybe within our team, the expertise of reactive, we weren't very skilled. We spent 6 months trying to do this, but then in the end we just said, okay, it's just going to be a lot simpler solving the business problem, because although we would love to have streams processing, what we were actually doing is actually a batch job. So at the end, so we basically now ripping it all out and making it all normal web services rather than reactive web services. I've timed myself to 10 minutes and it's up, so happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. I can't believe you managed to pull that all together at short notice and give that this afternoon. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to unmute or put them in the chat and we'll get them answered for you.
Yeah, I've got a question. Do you think streams and reactive services, do you think it'd be something that you return to at all? I'm just wondering whether will you face any like scalability issues or anything like that down the line with your project?
I think for now, as it is, because we are running the batch jobs, we're actually almost kind of avoiding the issue altogether, because we have this magic bullet of running multiple containers over Kubernetes. So the idea is actually we'll just scale out as much as we can. But I think at some point, what might be better is to actually get specific about use cases where we've got very high volume use cases which can't really be done via web services. I think that's probably where reactive will be better than trying to do it across, say, everything, which is I mean, one of the issues is you are forced to kind of choose one or the other with Spring, because once you can only do that out of the box. So I think that's quite restrictive, and it's probably better to kind of have a specific use case for doing this. So I think it's definitely has a place, but you have to really think it through all the way from the domain that you're looking at and to the streams that you're going to be building, and in terms of the sizing up the requirements. So definitely it has its place, but I think for us, for now, just to get our basic use cases working, we've just decided to kind of not investigate too much time into it anymore. So yeah.
Really good presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
I've not done reactive. That's why I had to ask what Mono and Flux were. So yeah, really good. Thank you. Really enjoyed that.
Thank you. I apologize. I should have put that down, because I shouldn't have assumed that, but I just went like that. Sorry.
No, I was impressed with that. You should do a longer version of this, with digging into more depth of exactly what the problem was with potential solutions. Obviously, yeah. It really interesting. Thank you. Cheers.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Thanks very much.